everybody. Welcome to North Burial Ground. If you haven't been here before or haven't met me, my name is Annalisa Heppner. I'm the City Cemetery Director for the City of Providence. And this is our biggest cemetery, so I'm so glad you're here. I hope if it's your first time, you get a great experience, and I'm sure you will because we're so excited to have Kurt here. So I met Kurt just via Instagram DMs, basically, when I started doing our social media and building up our social media presence, and immediately I was like, wow, this guy's really cool. And we should do stuff with him. He's got such a wealth of expertise and such a fun knowledge breadth about cemeteries, and honestly, it was really helpful when I was first starting here, so thank you, Kurt. And other than that introduction, I'm just gonna pass it on to Kurt, because that's who you're here to see. So, and then after he's done, we'll do we have like a short kind of tour that we'll do of some of the political figures in North Burial Ground, and though I am leading the tour, I did make Kurt promise to kind of tag team the tour with me, so we might be a little loose, see what we see. All right. So you.
Well, thank you, Annalisa. Thank everybody for coming. So, a lot of you know me, some of you I haven't met before, but I had kind of an unusual childhood, I guess. So I was interested after my mother bought me a book, So You Want to Be President. I got interested in the presidency. I was 7 years old at the time, and this book was illustrated by David Small, authored by Judith St. George, won a Caldecott medal for the illustrations, and I was really just captured by the illustrations. For example, it's an apocryphal story, so it's not really true, but it's alleged that President William Howard Taft, who was over 300 pounds, got stuck in the White House bathtub. Now, and then they had to make a larger bathtub that could hold the 4 average-sized men. Now, that is true that tub was that size. There is a photo of 4 men sitting in that bathtub, but Taft never got stuck in it. But David Small did an illustration that showed President Taft being lowered into the bathtub by an industrial crane as he's got a turkey leg and a champagne glass, in each one, and the construction workers got the hard hat on and everything. And we were talking about presidential siblings. How many siblings, do you have? And trying to get you to relate. And they showed George Washington, his siblings and half siblings, and it showed an adult-looking George Washington, but with the body of a kid, and his various siblings all like tugging on his clothes and his powdered wig and everything. And they're talking about like, oh, the president can go bowling, and they showed Nixon bowling and stuff like that. And it was just really, as a 7-year-old, that really spoke to me. And then the next year, I was 8. We went on a family trip to D.C. 20 years ago this month. I loved that. And then a few months after that, my father was watching a C-SPAN program. It was a re-airing of a book talk about the book, Who's Buried in Grant's Tomb. It was by C-SPAN founder and CEO Brian Lamb, and had contributions from other folks like presidential historian Richard Norton Smith, who's been the director of like 5 different presidential libraries. And they went to, separately, the different presidential grave sites. Richard Norton Smith actually started when he was about 8 or 9 years old. And so he told Brian Lamb about it, and then Brian Lamb, again the CEO of C-SPAN, so he went out, did all the presidents, and then he wanted to one-up Richard Norton Smith by going to the vice presidents too. So he got all but one of them, and that was Vice President Nelson Rockefeller. And then some of you who know me know that I later got Rockefeller, and that was an interesting experience. And then especially meeting Brian Lamb later, we sat down in his office, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. I'm like 20 years old, and I walked into the office there. They like knew who I was, and it was kind of really weird. I was like, okay, all that. So we sit down, and he's the close to 80-year-old, again, founder of C-SPAN, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, and he's like, how did you get it? And and I'm like, well, it wasn't and I'm trying to be diplomatic and everything. I'm like, well, it wasn't the most, ethical person, and this Mrs. Rockefeller, Happy, she had just passed away a few months prior, and he literally goes, "Oh, she's dead now. Who cares?" Tell me. So I'm like, all right, well, here's the photo, which is a photo that you'll see in the book. You might have already if you've read it. That shows how I got in there, and then my dad took my photo, but he skipped going to a different vice president's grave so that I could, in theory, have the record of going to all the vice presidents and presidents combined to myself. So
I went back to the Korean War.
yeah, that's what that happened there. But so it was an interesting childhood. Definitely didn't really make me popular in grade school or middle school or most of high school. But I kind of just went on the path of what I was interested in, and this book is kind of an amalgamation of history. It's a personal memoir, and you see me growing up through the years, and there's my family's cast of characters. My dad is full of jokes, as you can tell. My mother is comparatively stoic over there, so as she hasn't said anything yet. My sister, who skipped this tonight for a dinner reservation with a friend, doesn't like cemeteries, so that's fitting.
Been to enough of them.
Yeah, she's been to enough of them. And, and she was very reluctant going to these places, but it was just a way to learn about, history from a different way. You can read about it in a book, and, of course, I obviously encourage book reading and watching documentaries and everything, but there's just something about being in the environment where something happened, going to the only house that Abraham Lincoln ever owned, and then going up the staircase, and they actually encourage you to put your hand on the very railing that Abe and Mary and the kids would have used as you go up the stairs. And I'm on video at 9 years old, and I was like, the whole way up and everything, and seeing how many people have seen the Dewey defeats Truman photo, him holding up the newspaper. Well, my dad and I saw the actual newspaper. They have it at the Truman Library there. Then we went to the rail car in Miami, Florida, where Truman was standing when he held up the newspaper. And you can go to, my friend Rebecca here went with me to Ford's Theater, and she's a big Lincoln fan. Check out her Lincoln bicep tattoo sometime. And it's like you go and they're like, there's the gun that killed Abraham Lincoln that John Wilkes Booth fired, and there's the box, and you go to the Smithsonian, and there's the hat that he wore. And it didn't make the cut in the book other than a slight mention, but very moving experience my father and I had was walking the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where John Lewis and other civil rights activists were beaten on Bloody Sunday, and then a few weeks later, the subsequent march all the way to Montgomery. And so what I'm trying to get across in the book is that if you hated history in your classes in school, I can kind of understand that. I didn't really like all my history classes either, but I really got interested in history by going to the places where the people, engaged in the activities, or the grave sites, because in the physical sense, that's as close as we can get. So, none of us here ever met Stephen Hopkins, but here he is. Anyway, so he signed the Declaration of Independence, one of 56, and obviously we all know about that. And so it's not just, here's something I read about in school, and it's just these, was old white guys that signed it, except for there was one or two young white guys, but it's like it just puts in, there can be so ethereal sometimes, or as I say in the opening of the book, you look at Abraham Lincoln's image on the $5 bill, it's like that doesn't really seem like a real guy, it's like he's just so ubiquitous and everywhere, but it's like, no, you go and there they are, and it's kind of it can be a mix of how they wanted to be remembered in the cemetery or how other people wanted them to be remembered. Like James Garfield got assassinated. He was the 20th president. He was only in for a few months, but then he's got my favorite grave, which I talk a lot about in the book. It's 180 feet tall. It's a tomb with a chandelier in there. It's got painted mosaics, 8-foot tall Italian marble statue. It's got gargoyles, terracotta. It's insane, but there's no way he like plotted all that out. You know, that was what the people in charge of the Memorial Foundation wanted to do to commemorate this long-term congressman slash slain president. And you know, then you go to Martin Van Buren's little roadside cemetery in Kinderhook, New York, in the Hudson Valley there, and he's got a grave that essentially, you know, looks comparable to Hopkins here. You know, you would never know if not for signage that, oh hey, a U.S. president is buried here. But then nearby, there's also his home. There's a sign at the location where he was born. So obviously, my main priority as a kid was going to the president and vice president graves, and I learned a lot that way, but it was also the accompanying journeys as well to the, you know, the different museums, home sites, getting locked into cemeteries with my father, farting ketchup bottles, and at restaurants that were quite funny when you were sleep deprived, and lots of other things. But so that's kind of the general overview of my kind of weird childhood. So now we're going to unpack some other trauma. So I was going to read an excerpt of one of the chapters. So I'm going to do that, and then I guess, I don't know if we're going to do the tour and then signing or whatever order, but I'm just going to read a chapter or part of a chapter, and then we're going to figure it out, I guess. And of course, if anybody has, well, I guess I'll read it, and then if anybody has any questions, we'll do that too. So.
You have 80 presidential bookmarkers.
Yeah. No. All right. So to set the scene, so this chapter is called "The Lone Star President Left." So I was 17 years old, senior year of high school. I had only one remaining dead president out of the then 38 dead presidents. And I hadn't even sent a text message yet at that point in my life. So that was, you know, that was an interesting juxtaposition. I've been to 37 dead presidents. But so I had one left. It was Lyndon Baines Johnson in Stonewall, Texas, a bit of a ways away from here in Rhode Island, and you know, it took us a while to gather funding and everything, but my father and I went down there, and I always like to try to get as close to the grave as possible. You can't always get as close as we are to Stephen Hopkins here. You know, some presidents, there might be a little bit of a wall, or you know, I just went out to California, and a lot of the celebrities there are locked away, and you can't get to some of them unless you have connections that are good at networking. So luckily I was able to do that, get into like some blocked places like where Humphrey Bogart and W.C. Fields are, but you know, I always like to get as close as possible to where the physical remains are, and also just because for my own experience, and then also photographic documentation, because obviously the farther away you are from something, the harder it is to read, generally. So I'd seen photos of Lyndon Johnson's grave on the internet, and you know, relatively speaking, it wasn't that far away from the wall. So maybe the wall's here, and maybe the grave is a little bit farther than that kind of dilapidated, fenced-in plot there. So, you know, human-wise, when you're there in person, okay, it's not that bad. But taking a photo and the perspective is tough. So sometimes we've hopped some walls and fences, and it wasn't a high wall. It was only about that tall, but it said, no trespassing. So, of course, my dad's like, all right, we're going to jump over. So, so this is April 2012. We had 7 days to jam in as many Texas sites as possible, so as soon as we checked out the rental car, we rushed to our first stop. There was no wading into the shallow end on this vacation. We just jumped right in with the trespassing, but not to get Lyndon and Lady Bird Johnson yet. The list of famous Texas burials I compiled before the trip included Baseball Hall of Fame inductee Rogers Hornsby, interred in a family cemetery on the outskirts of Austin, where there were no skyscrapers in sight, just trees, roads, and more trees. My father parked on a dirt patch near the cemetery entrance where a green guide sign let us know we were in the right place. The two no trespassing, keep out signs by the closed gate were less welcoming. With no people around, though, and a gap between the gate and the fence, we began to mosey our way down the unpaved road. I specifically emphasized there were no people around, because we soon became aware of two chained Dobermans staring at us from the yard of the neighboring house. We knew there was a risk of getting caught climbing the wall at the Johnson family cemetery, but would Rogers Hornsby's grave be our Waterloo instead? Getting jailed before I could see LBJ's stone was not an enticing scenario. The guard dogs never strayed in their menacing gaze, but they didn't make a sound either. Our continued movements down the road elicited no reaction, so we proceeded uninterrupted on our trek. After a third of a mile, we reached Hornsby Bend Cemetery, enclosed by a chain-link fence with an unlocked gate. We caught all the breaks. Even the second baseman's grave was easy to find. It was covered in baseballs. Were they left by family members, or did some St. Louis Cardinals fans also disregard the warnings? I didn't dwell on that question long. Heaven forbid the delay lead to the discovery of our rental car. Once I was satisfied with the pictures, the two of us hurried back toward the main road. As we passed the dogs, this time they began to sound the alarm, but the deed was done. So, not the best guard dogs when they wait till you commit the crime. The rest of the Austin stops included a Hall of Famer from another sport, Dick Night Train Lane, who as a rookie set the NFL single-season interceptions record of 14 in a 12-game season, it must be noted. We then went to the Texas State Cemetery for the graves of Stephen F. Austin, the father of Texas, and Governor John and Nellie Connolly, who were in the Kennedy limousine during its doomed drive through Dealey Plaza. The governor was injured in the attack as well, but survived. I also checked off my 18th state capitol and briefly explored the LBJ library. Though there wasn't much to see due to renovations, the Johnson artifacts that were displayed brought to the forefront the thought I had largely suppressed during the day's adventures. In less than 24 hours, I was going to complete my quest. Strategically, my father booked a night stay in Johnson City, just 15 minutes down Route 290 from the President's Ranch. Johnson City was also where LBJ's family lived during his childhood after they left his birth home in Stonewall. When we woke up in the morning, our plan was to explore the boyhood home and then go to the ranch. But then an employee at the visitor center nonchalantly mentioned that the ranch would be incredibly busy later in the day when the droves of tour buses arrived. My father and I turned to each other in horror. Large gatherings of people would make a surreptitious expedition over the cemetery wall near impossible. We realized we had to go right then to head them off. The LBJ Ranch grew to encompass 2,700 acres during the Johnson administration, and its size was still vast in its modern incarnation as a National Park Service site. Guests explored the land by vehicle, and we picked up our driving permit, a map, and an audio tour CD at the Ranch Visitor Center. Our car crossed over the Pedernales River, and I started down the literal final stretch of my presidential journey. We passed the Junction School and had just driven by Lyndon's birthplace when the cemetery came into view on our left. My father parked in the small lot nearby, and we walked over to the low wall where a lone tourist stood looking at the Johnsons' granite graves. We engaged him in some brief small talk, but I soon took advantage of the auspicious conditions and climbed over the barrier. A park ranger cruised by in a pickup truck not long before I entered the cemetery, so I crouched down as I captured up-close shots of the reddish-brown stones. LBJ's was emblazoned with the presidential seal, and ladybirds sported an etching of a flower, like those planted across the country as part of her beautification campaign. When I was finished taking photos, I gestured to my father, and he joined me over the wall. He hurriedly snapped my picture as I squatted, half-hidden, behind the president's monument, my 8.5-year mission accomplished. Before I had the chance to pose at Ladybird's grave, my father beckoned toward me, and we climbed back over the wall. There was a man on a riding mower in an adjacent field. You can play this part, Annalisa, if you get back to the There was a man on a riding mower in an adjacent field, and he appeared none too pleased about our excursion into the cemetery. My dad suspected he may have radioed in a call about us on his walkie-talkie and intimated it was best to go explore the rest of the ranch. That should give Mower Guy, you gotta give these people Seinfeld-esque nicknames, Man Hands, Mower Guy. Alright. That should give Mower Guy time to finish up in that area, and then, if there were still few tourists around, we could return and get some additional photos inside the cemetery. We reversed course and drove back toward the park's anterior where the Junction School stands. LBJ attended the one-room schoolhouse for only a short while in 1912, but brought it into the spotlight when he used it as the signing location of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in 1965. His teacher, Catherine Dietrich Loney, sat beside the president during the event. Johnson was no stranger to theatrics, be they policy-related or just for kicks. LBJ used to take visitors on rides around his ranch, and, with his car speeding toward the river, he shouted that the brakes weren't working. He didn't tell his panicked guests that they were sitting in an amphibious vehicle. I was amused when I read about the raucous river hijinks, but only because I was not in danger of becoming one of LBJ's hapless victims. The amphicar was displayed alongside some of the president's other rides in a glass enclosure. The ranch was littered with all sorts of features. I promise there's only like two pages left. The ranch was littered with all sorts of features that highlighted different points on the timeline of LBJ's life. The Texas White House, the home where LBJ died just 4 years after he left Washington, was within spitting distance of the structure where he took his first breaths. The birth home was actually a reconstructed replica built during his presidency in 1964. According to the NPS website, he delighted in showing guests his version of the birthplace and found great pleasure in escorting visitors from room to room. The audio tour showcased LBJ's The audio tour showcased LBJ's personal tastes as well and played his favorite song, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, while we drove past descendants of his Hereford cattle. Johnson's aura was omnipresent. After we made the rounds, we returned to the cemetery, which I had all to myself. This time, my father stayed on the outside, and I ventured in alone. Emboldened by the absence of tourists and lawnmower sounds, I stood behind Ladybird's gravestone as my father zoomed in with the camera. I then switched back to LBJ's marker, as I figured standing photos would come out much better than the previous ones in which I squatted. My innocuous photo session was truncated when something suddenly emerged from behind my father. Mower Guy had turned off his blades and was riding toward the cemetery. He'd gone into stealth mode. I fled to my right and clambered over the side wall of the cemetery before I dashed at breakneck speed around the rectangular perimeter to the back wall. If Mower Guy, here, go around here, and he was on the other end, so it's like if Mower Guy tried to approach me from either direction, I could just maneuver in the opposite way. I had no desire for confrontation. This left my father to experience the wrath of our nemesis alone. He knew it wasn't good when I started sprinting, and he turned to come face to face with the angry landscaper. "That's the second time your boy's been in there," he castigated in his heavy southern drawl. He pledged to alert the park rangers unless we vacated immediately. My dad has a proclivity for recalcitrance toward authority, but he decided it was best not to mess with Texas where the Rangers might be armed. You're absolutely right, sir. We're leaving immediately. Never said that before or after in his life. For once, he had no witty rejoinder. I grabbed the camera bag and started for the car, where I joined him once I judged mower guy was a comfortable distance away, because I was not talking to him. So, we were booking it out of there in the car. But just before we drove back over the Pedernales River, we realized my sunglasses were left by the cemetery gate. Now, reason would argue that we should have continued on our path to the ranch exit, but someone had other ideas. I had a bad track record with sunglasses, I still do, which were often broken or lost, and my father was tired of paying for replacements. My objections were summarily rebuked as he whipped the car around. My dad parked a distance away from the cemetery and ushered me out, possibly feeding me to the wolves. Mower guy hadn't ventured far, and I had no plans to spur a walkie-talkie conversation between him and the Rangers. As such, I opted to stage an overdramatic performance that made it abundantly clear I had no intentions of re-entering the cemetery. So I will just stage this a moment. That's theatrics, right? So they're there, whatever. So mower guy's watching me, and I'm just like lunging him. I think my glasses are over here, I shouted, ostensibly to my father. Mower guy eyed me as I sashayed back toward the cemetery entrance as I dramatically leaned towards the glasses to pick them up. Here they are, I yelled as I held up the shades to punctuate my point. Satisfied no authorities would be called, I scurried back to the vehicle. I got one paragraph left. Though we were in the wrong, not mower guy, getting evicted from my final president grave put a damper on what was supposed to be a glorious moment, the culmination of a journey that started in the 4th grade. Over the next few days, we made various stops around Texas, including the San Antonio Riverwalk, Dwight Eisenhower's birthplace in Denison, and a bunch of graves. Among the dead we visited were Lee Harvey Oswald, Bonnie and Clyde, and John Nance Garner, my 36th vice president. In one Dallas cemetery alone, we visited sports legends Lamar Hunt, Tom Landry, and Mickey Mantle, along with actress Greer Garson and Sarah T. Hughes, the federal judge who administered the oath of office to LBJ aboard Air Force One after the Kennedy assassination. Yet only one historical figure had the ability to save our trip, and we couldn't visit his grave. He was still alive. And that is that chapter. So I cut out some of the beginning. So does anybody want to hop over a cemetery wall and come face to face with mower guy?
Recreate that experience here anytime.
Does anybody have any questions, I guess?
What time of day was that when you went over to that? What's the safest time to go there if I wanted to go at Johnson?
Early as possible. So if they open at 10, go at 10.
Okay.
So that's what I would say. Yes.
Wasn't it LBJ that used to say as president, come on down anytime you want?
Yeah, he had tons of guests over there, and my dad likes to say, we should take that into consideration as certain, fences you're hopping. Like, would LBJ have hopped a fence? Like, yeah, probably. I know it was his property, but he relieved himself on a tree right by there, and his parents were buried there. So, and he loved his parents. So, again, I know it's his property, but you're like, okay, LBJ was showing people his appendix scars and everything. I'm not too worried about what LBJ's ghost would think about jumping over the wall. His daughters might not have liked it. Yes.
I want to know if Paul has any objections to things in Kurt's book.
No, because growing up with a historian, everything's actually factual, and it's his perception also as a youth. Plus, I was used to it because growing up, I'd be driving around listening to oldies, and I'd be singing in my vehicle, and I can't sing. who was born decades after the songs I was listening to would be correcting me on the lyrics. So I learned a word. So if you have the wrong lyrics, it's called a mondegreen. So I'm just used to him being very accurate stuff. So I'm used to it.
Do you like how you came out in the book? You like the image of you?
Well, I broke it to a couple of friends, like on the back cover, I'm explained as the zany, boundary pushing father, and they said, like, were we supposed to be surprised? So it's accurate. So
Okay.
I really undersold it.
You love all that.
But something I did too was, I did consult with some various people at some point, having people prove. Obviously, my dad has probably read the book more than anybody other than myself, because he's just like going through time after time. Do you catch a typo this time or something? And my dad's friend Andy was able to give some feedback about the time we met him, and my sister, I ran a few things by her because she was slightly more amenable about talking about some of it. So what helped too was that in addition to my way too accurate memory, I also have a lot of pictures. I had, brochures to reference certain things, or like language that the museums were using at the time. And I had a lot of home video footage. So I was able to pull exact quotes most of the time. So I wasn't, pretty much anytime I use an exact quote, it is 100% an exact quote that we pulled from our home videos. And then even there's a chapter where my dad and I go down to Georgia and we meet Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. Also, yes, that's how you pronounce it, Rosalind, not Rosalind. I got to do the work of Plains, Georgia, reminding people that. When we did that, they recorded his Sunday school sermon. So even years later, we're like, hey, can we get the June 9th, 2013 Jimmy Carter service? And then you go, and then you pan to the audience, and we're picking ourselves out, like, there we are. And then I could pull, the exact quotes of what Jimmy Carter had said and when people laughed and everything. So that really helped with the accuracy, I'd say, and bringing some of the other people, not just myself, the other characters, if you will, to life, is because we had it on video. So. Anything else?
What is your writing process? Like, do you sit for 30 minutes in the beginning of the day and say, I'm going to write 2 pages? I mean, did you have any type of, like, my stepdad was a screenwriter, so he would, 5 in the morning start writing and just would write until he couldn't anymore. So what was your process like?
I have no process. And a couple years ago, I got very retroactively diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes a little sense. But it wasn't as apparent when I was younger, but I was just like, oh, it's whenever I feel like. So literally, it was like whenever I felt like it, or whenever something hit me. So I worked on, I had some structures of some earlier writings I'd done with, like, when I was 14, that had a few details that I might have forgotten, and I threw those in there. And then I went through and I watched all of the home videos from those trips and kind of jotted down the things, specific quotes, and I guess I kind of filled it out over time. But I guess if anything, that was my method of whatever I was thinking, I just put down, and I worked on more refining it later, I guess. But as far as setting aside certain time or do it a certain time of day or whatever, I was not structured with it at all. But I'm happy with how it came out. So. Yes, Sarah.
So, obviously, this is like it was a really important journey for you, but what made you want to put it into a book and share it with the world? Like, what or when or why?
Well,
I mean, I love how it came out, and like now I want to go visit them. So I'm very thankful you did. But like, obviously, when you were 8 and you started this whole adventure, you weren't like, oh, this is my purpose is to like write a book.
right.
At what point did you want to share with everybody else in paper?
Well, a few people had mentioned to me over the years, like, you should write a book. So, I had other things going on, college and whatnot, and then, so July 2016, Hillary Clinton gets the Democratic Party nomination, first woman to get a major party nomination for president of the United States. And I had met Hillary 2 years prior, and actually got on the news, and it was a whole interesting experience. I gave her my business card. There's a variation of this, so it's not, well, actually, it's this Super Soaker image that some of you might know if you've gotten that far in the book. And so she's on video, and she goes, "Oh my God!" And and so like they actually included that in the news, and so book signing, not for me, but like a celebrity or somebody. You're not going to spend too much time with them. You spend as much time with me as you want. But it's like it's really assembly line rapid fire. And with her, she spent 1.5 minutes talking with me, and we were toward the front of this line. And so the news, after I moved over, the news all swarmed on me, because like, what was she talking to you about for that long? And then they interviewed me. I was like, oh, my website, and Graves, and Jim Lavelle and everything. But so I'm like, that was a really interesting story. My dad waited out overnight, and I was thinking, I met the person who might possibly be the first woman president of the United States. Well, that didn't happen. But anyway, I was thinking that night, like, you know what? I should actually sit down and I should start writing some of this. So I wrote out a lot of that chapter, and then because of the flow of the book, I cut the entirety of that chapter. but it was just that moment of, again, engaging. So it was another moment of engaging with the history. Like, and that was during or even before the fact, not retroactively going to a place where something happened. I'm like, this lady who I met in the past might be making history in the future or now. So, of course she did in many ways, senator from New York and first lady and all that. But so it's just another, instance of engaging history and a lot of the support of other people and encouragement over the years.
Can I add to your answer to Sarah's question?
Yes.
That I harassed you about why you wanted to write the book. So as your English teacher, to say you need to have a reason, you need to have a purpose, and he was like, I'm writing this book because I want to write this book. And it's fantastic. He just did it exactly how he wanted to do it, the way he saw it.
Thank you.
And I'm very proud of you.
I'll take one last question, because we're probably pushing it time-wise on certain things. But one last question. Alrighty. But alright, I guess that's it. Thank you for coming, and want to do the tour first, or?
I think let's do this signing stuff first.
Yeah, to the signing
And
first,
then we'll do
put
the
stuff away
tour,
over
and
there.
then it'll be easy to
Yeah.
kind of near the gates, so we'll kind of do it that way.
Alright, sounds good.
And if you want to leave your chair, feel free to leave your chairs, obviously.
Well, thank you all again for coming. Alright. Well, if you want, if you already have a book that you want me to sign, you can bring that up. If you are buying a book, my dad is taking care of purchases, so harass him.
So proud of you.
Thank you. I did not.
Really?
I didn't realize. I was just like, I was like, it was literally like over here. I was like, one chapter. And then the rest of it just all like, a stream of consciousness.
I don't think you're actually selling it.
It relates to a certain area.
What it was like to be passionate
But I mean,
about
that's
the
like,
He didn't need it to be people who liked presidents, people who liked secretaries. He just wanted to show people that he was passionate about something.
this is my friend Kevin. This is my friend Rebecca.
See where it was.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like,
I like your
there's your
outfit.
business cards, the same as your website.
Oh, really?
I just want to say, here's a passion. What is your
nice.
you know, and it works because it's not just
Literary
about
agent in 2010.
at cemeteries and things like that.
It's
It's just about a kid who got really,
I know you're getting animal food.
you know, and Julius is like very inspired.
No, I didn't know you could do that.
But he's inspired.
What are those tool things? Those tall things. Looks like a
They're
well.
probably above ground. They have some tombstones over there. They're
Yeah.
1759.
Julius is like that.
One. No, it was New Hampshire.
I read it like twice.
Is not right. And his intelligence, it doesn't have to be about presidents or parades or any of that. That's what I love.
Anybody next up?
I saw the first chapter.
Hey, how are ya? Yeah, same.
Yes, I bought you a copy of the book in Kurt signed it.
He's signed it. I didn't know that says it. 163. I thought I paid for 2 books online.
Ah,
It said this is mine.
I have no idea. I
It said to ask you.
wouldn't ask. It's ask me. No, maybe ask his mom. I don't
I had
know.
ordered online. He said this is mine. See? Sale ID is 160.
Okay. Just tell.
Thank you.
He didn't. He said to ask.
I tried to get that balance of, the history and then
Oh, be sure to check your spam or junk.
They know how I put, you know, it's just stuff I can't remember. I thought I did.
That's what I have to do.
Yeah, I am on the back of the thing. I can push because it's very straight with my voice here.
I have nothing to do with that other than
We do. I was just before.
and you know,
I'm not going to put it in.
I couldn't study that.
See, I was never a studier.
Not even 6 down.
Oh, here?
Wrong person.
This is Sam, friend Kurt, originally was professor Lois. And how do you know Kurt? Oh, goodness. Oh, okay.
That's what he said, alumni. I wasn't sure if it was college or high school.
High school, yeah.
Wow.
And it'd be nice.
Wow.
Same here.
Now, how did you know when in high school?
I always think that
I'm a nerd.
when I try to
I text everybody.
I
And
was
get back to
We have to watch together.
Here's the new day.
I
That's what I want to do. Get for me.
I always think I knew him.
I think elementary school.
I've known him.
They've been known for longer than me. I was a middle
Wait a
transition.
minute.
Stuff like that. Like going like snap. It's like,
They put all that in.
work. This season, like endurance at that point, buddy.
It's to his credit that he used it.
Different guys will left.
No, this is not even.
I stopped working. But he made sure.
I knew Kansas from middle school. I mean,
Come on, these come
well,
full.
last time I saw it, he told me. Middle school.
Of course, then later ranked and accessible. But, you know, it's like, of course, at the time of the actual signing, it's like, oh, it's great.
And I was like, oh, okay, you know, that's great.
And then you got
the class with me. There's one of the kids where I was like, should I be such good friends with my students? You know, like should we be coming to my kids' birthday party? You know, like things like that. And I was like, he's just interesting. He was babysitting for Julius regularly because I was teaching a night class. And all I would do so Paul was Julius' babysitter, and they had so much fun. Finally! So Julius got like a little experience of what it was like.
How about you? It's nice to see you again.
Oh, Francis Bacon?
You always forget about him. We used to have
It's like a extreme Francis Bacon. It's different, right?
Oh, no, we have nothing to do with that. Right, that were, well, so there was
No, I'm just saying. I remember my family telling me, "Don't you get out of
You know what the thing is? It's always millennial or Gen Z women, especially like, I love your SpongeBob. I mean, no guys are coming up to him and be like, I love your SpongeBob.
I speak SpongeBob, everybody.
I love it.
I have a vintage SpongeBob shirt. I collect them like mint with tags. I have about 40. I only collect like 2000, 2001, 2002 when the kids were young. I get all pictures when the kids are young. And I took some out and wore them out, but now it's like time to collect them. It's another crazy collection.
Do you remember when Kurt's dad did?
I had that was just a presentation.
Yeah, I said to you, but if you showed it since, I don't know.
He also made
They also have a membership in the military.
I'll probably have to go through my
You might have to show me again. I may see.
Well, yeah, they were.
She said she was
Yeah, but it was difficult.
I write
You have the patience to do it.
Because the thing is,
told some people, like,
you don't have practice with personal teaching. I write like print everything.
Oh, so there's a new painting.
And it's my sympathy. I'll see you again sometime.
I just cut in front of
And also here, I don't know. Here, and you can be if you're a public school teacher, you still have free teachers there.
You know, I'm old and I do sales and marketing work, and I used to set up at trade shows. I was a co-sponsor for the first comic book convention in Rhode Island in 1976, so I know I'm going to facilitate the sale. It was like, I got to get through
Yeah, please do. And I'll think of all the other things. There's other things that special privileges. Yeah, I like the shoes. That's very nice. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. Anytime. And thank you for complimenting my shoes and starting our conversation. Oh, you said that.
Yeah, it didn't end up scoring until later. But when it was told specifically from Lightning, what was I going to do?
Maybe I can get the
picture.
It's a gorgeous tree. I don't know what kind of tree it is. So old.
You like places that let the grass grow after
It is.
Very famous grape.
Well, like you said, Annalisa could have done
I only see it when it comes up. That's it.
that was fun. But I mean, it did put a little, after all this, so it put a little fall on it. Or
Stuff, I only see that.
now it's like an
I went to it was called a Sunday 1899 picnic with my partner, and Kurt was there too actually.
Finally get it. Like, right now,
It was held here. We all dressed like it was
I usually don't
1899.
back down and
And we had like a
wise
little
ass
picnic in the
hands,
park.
but
It was nice. I mean, in the
the
cemetery.
Rangers all
it
had
feels
9 millimeters. So I just right. Totally foreign to me. You are correct, sir. I was like Ed McMahon with Johnny Buzzard. You are correct, sir. We're leaving media.
Yeah.
This is another very macho and gone.
Thank you. Uncle Raymond gets mentioned. When I just talked about what we're doing. Because everyone thinks GI Bill, so again, trying to bring in the personal.
Austin, I feel like
Yeah, the illness is.
not now. Good friend. It left us 11 and a half years, or 11 years ago.
Oh, he's not just a historian.
I actually knew. I had heard the name Julius before. I was like, oh, okay.
They're so proud of it. Underpasses it with like stars. Stars.
My next
Texas is the
one
best.
is Hyannis.
It's
So, been a ways away. So I don't have any Rhode Island ones
How did you do
planned.
that? Just by
I
taking
got
a
a
picture of the
virtual
lake?
event on August 3rd with the White House Historical Association. Who sounds like that independent especially why I haven't even been able to announce that.
Because I'm just supporting it for
August 7th in Hyannis.
Picture this is just
The JFK
Oh, like dogs?
Hyannis.
I have to ask her what kind
It's,
of bird is
and
this?
it's not the, but it's a stepping stone to maybe the real JFK museum. But they do, they obviously focus on his Hyannis.
Oh, like the Cornell Laboratory.
I used to, it's tough getting into the federal facilities. I gotta work my way up, and then once you get into one, you can kind of get into them all. So I gotta work my way into one right now. And then the NPS and the
No, but it's still in the
Usually, like, I'll try, like, I'll just take pictures.
Gives me like that idea.
but at least you can capture
But I was so young and I didn't do as much as I
dropped
I got put on the paper.
and then
But now, like,
actual day came out.
whether you're a Republican or not, I mean, now it's like, that's the worst. I don't care about how I act. So maybe it seemed like I didn't vote.
Most self-published books
That was the
are
one thing
about
I'm like,
so I
I
don't
like Congress with
I only have the two girls.
I got some organizations on some like some historic sites that we reached out to like one.
Well, you know what? Everybody told me go try for the boy. I was meant to have girls. If I would have had another one, I know it would have been a girl. So I would have had the three
And
girls. That's it.
they both
I
wanted.
can do this with my relatives. So I said, we move along.
Alright, no, we have to move along because he said to link him.
Still the tour though. Maybe wrong.
And then for some reason I decided one more is okay. You're already in the game. One more.
It waited 5 years to have me.
I know, me too. Well, there's a big age difference with my kids, 6.5 years, because for a while I said, maybe just one, I'm an only child. And then my husband was the one who said,
I'm so glad
she's in kindergarten, you're gonna have another one. And I'll tell you what, they get it
We just hung out today for like 4 or 5 hours.
Healthy such consistency. Yep. So, you never know. You never know. I do know.
Here, but also I do conspiracy.
That probably won't happen. If it does, I'll let you know. Like the bike race and stuff.
testing everything to make sure we actually have like enough
Yeah,
critters
yeah, so I've not been yet.
And my hair. Oh my god. Okay.
a beetle, just full on.
Yeah, I was shooting, right? And then like probably that beetle came like on my hand.
Yeah, it's a national park service site. I've been there with my dad.
I think that if I
My
know
dad's been there.
I mean, I'm not sorry. You say you want to, but full on flew into my hair and just like sat on it. Hey, you can probably get that one out. Look at it, look. I got it for you. I got it for you.
You went to that place too?
Yeah, I don't know if you're sticking around for the tour. I know it's getting a bit later because I got really proposed.
Stay for the tour.
But, you know, anyway, thank you for coming. Yeah. Hello, thank you for coming.
I just had
I should have taken. I know what I wanted.
I will see.
Some people don't want to get a big plate and then you glue it in.
That sounds good. I drove my No, because I went to visit a grave down by Atlantic City and then I went up the coast. See you next time.
To President Clinton, Ryan, and then some people
It's alright. My time knew this kid. You were in
South Carolina, I love the country.
the whole thing
The next day,
through.
somebody gets to talk to them because it's good. So it's like, oh, Bert, you found the medallion at the grave. It's like, what? Because, no, I leave it there on purpose. Just put it back. Like I said, I'm at the airport. We got a couple of people. Like, we do a lot of graves. I would never take
Yeah,
the
to get
memento
sent
on the
by
grave.
the
I would never take anything.
You know, I'm glad it's that people really
I was taking pictures. Yeah, I'm so proud of myself.
Oh, yeah. I just sat down and like it was also sports drinking.
Oh, I was in it with him one time.
That's right.
Yeah. I did so bad. I didn't get a single one right. They were making it so hard. Is that the one I saw? I hope you didn't watch it. I lost. It was like I think it was like the second one, but they were asking like, who was this one's cousin in 1890 whatever, and I'm like, I have no idea. It was unfair.
history of video games or whatever took place. You know, explore if there's not that much, you know, written about it.
It was like real Jeopardy. It was like real Jeopardy.
So that's what I'm trying to just inspire people. That's what he and I both
Senator in New Jersey, and he was correct. NBA basketball.
I remember that one.
And I won an award.
That is ironic.
well, you have to very I do get a lot. My mom is in there, so
Yeah, it was.
I do hear a lot.
Work at a cemetery? Could you believe it?
I mean, it was a bloodbath. I was sitting on the couch like, I don't know what I'm doing.
What's his favorite cemetery?
Taking pictures of the school.
And
Yeah.
is it
Zero.
book the author's page with some numbers?
Thank you for
I
coming.
mean, he also like really fast on the
My
buzzer.
wife and I were thrilled when we found out that
When he knows it, he
a
knows it.
28-year-old guy bought his own plot.
And then he had like a little story.
Stuff like when
His
you work
favorite cemetery is in Washington. What is He's to be buried in Congressional Cemetery. So
He's
the
got
book,
the,
you walk
he
this big,
has an eidetic memory.
and there's some numbers in there. That's an Easter egg. That's in the book. Yeah, he told like I found out about like. So my wife was
Like, I don't need to know that.
What
I need to know
is
this.
for this? Then you go just a regular
It's like
in the 20s, I'd be really. It's a good investment. I took it's a good investment. I said eventually, eternity, if you come out with like a penny a year.
So, what's your
just what it's like to be passionate about it. Absolutely. You know, it's not like it's he's an intellectual. Oh, it's about presidents. You know, that's not.
Nah.
And
Wish. Oh, Jim Irsay with the Colts?
Oh, absolutely.
He can afford anything. Yeah, wow.
Trivia contest.
All different presidents or?
During the pandemic,
Nice.
they did a trivia thing. It wasn't just about cheetahs all the time.
Well,
He was like 9 years old.
Raising them right.
But it's a secret.
Irsay didn't have it. Oh, wow.
Against them. And group that don't have
Yeah, probably.
Well, it's nice that he gets it out to the public and see, not just, private staff.
It's all right. It was right. I said.
And he goes around the country and buying whatever he wants.
It's been so long.
Yeah, I'd like to have gone. I didn't even know about it.
If you go on the guy's Jim Irsay's website, you can see all the stuff that he takes up with him with his tropical museum. It's like going to Smithsonian type of thing.
I'm listening. I just want to get some do a video.
No offense at all, please.
I remember you came to the Brown Book store.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've been following him. I was actually at that Hillary Clinton book signing that was on TV.
Yeah, but I was outside of the night. I think it's the person outside of the
I got to see Hillary for 30 seconds.
You notice they put all pieces of water around. Water will stop a bullet. So that's why they had. You remember there was all pieces.
I remember going through the land. I remember the no cameras rule and mad about that.
We did. We had the parasite.
Yeah, that's both ways.
A big guy.
We did the what do you call it? It's inside. Yeah. So they had like a little box.
All right, one more signing and then. Anybody?
Alright, we're gonna try to get started in like a minute. We'll let Kurt do his last signing, and then we'll get started. And we'll start right here. So you're already in the right spot. Okay.
Anybody want a sports drink? I got 2 sports drinks left.
I got one already. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you so much. I might take one.
Try to be all.
You don't even want to post this Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I've seen like replicas of that on porn stars. People show up. It's gonna be the right size.
He did take me to a lot of their graves.
I forgot my copy of the book to have him sign.
Yeah, that's where the property is. The beetle that kept popping
Did I really do that? I like put it on my counter to take it to work with me.
Thanks for that question. The only thing that really was on that was Bob's
No, I didn't.
Reagan. I didn't know about. Now I know a lot of stuff you did. And
Ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
I didn't know then. So that's the only thing that made me for him.
Let me just move back here and get out of the way.